It's one of the cheapest electric cars in the world. The Dacia Spring costs €22,750 before deducting environmental and funding bonuses. Comparable small electric cars cost €2,000 to €7,000 more. But what can you expect from the economy menu? Where do you have to make compromises?
In my opinion, that's not possible, and I would say that costs were cut at the wrong end.
And where does the Spring surprise?
That's not just good, it could be record-breaking.
We find out in Dreieich near Frankfurt.
There are a lot of people out there who are very frugal when choosing a car and think about all the new models. Yes, it's all well and good that they all have this or that, but let's be honest, I don't need all of that at all. Anyone who thinks like that should pay close attention for the next few minutes. Because at Dacia, it's all about installing only the bare essentials and reducing the price as much as possible. And with the Spring, electric fans can now also get their low costs.
Dacia's first electric car in Germany costs less than €16,000 after deduction of government funding. Does that make it a real bargain? Or does it apply? If you pay nothing, you get nothing. Visually, there is nothing to complain about. The design looks fresh and modern from all sides. The 15 centimetres of ground clearance and off-road look make it appear robust. Only the small 14-inch rims seem a bit lost in the large wheel arches. But small wheels obviously help when it comes to efficiency. The charging port is hidden at the front under the Dacia logo.
It can be charged with up to 30 kilowatts charging power. That's not really much. An Opel Corsa E charges with up to 100 kilowatts, and the 30 kilowatts charging power is not even standard. The CCS connection costs €800 extra. Without it, you can only charge with AC, that is, with 3.7 kilowatts on an AC charger.
With 30 kilowatts charging power, the Spring stands at the charging station for almost an hour to charge the 26.8 kilowatt-hour battery to 80%. With 3.7 kilowatts at the AC charging station, it takes more than 6.5 hours. And on a household socket with 2.3 kilowatts, the process takes 11.5 hours.
That's a pretty long time. And if you then consider that the WLTP range is modest at 230 kilometers, we can say that the Spring is not necessarily recommended for long distances.
The simply designed seats are also intended for short journeys. At least they have artificial leather instead of fabric cover. The fact that the fittings are almost entirely made of plastic is to be expected in this price range. Nevertheless, the workmanship is acceptable. All buttons are tight and nothing creaks.
It's not surprising that we're sitting in the red car. That's for logistical reasons. We'll switch back to the green one soon. With 44 horsepower, the Dacia Spring is the weakest car I've ever driven. On the other hand, electric cars are always relatively lively because of the maximum torque that is immediately available. That's why I'm very excited to see what it feels like to accelerate from 0 to 100 with the Spring. And that's what we're doing now. There's nothing there. I think this will take a while. I can play something with my cameraman Volker. I spy with my little eye something and it's green.
The field?
Wrong. The OK down here. We're at 90, 100 kilometers an hour. So up to 50 kilometers per hour, everything is still okay. It is also specified with an acceleration of 0 to 50 in 5.8 seconds. That's all still okay. But above that, it's very sluggish. 0 to 100 is given as 19.1 seconds. It feels like it was even longer.
Apart from the fact that it stops at 125 kilometers per hour anyway, higher speeds are not for the Spring. It's better off in the city centre.
The steering, for example, is also very soft and very light. It also sways quite a bit. It's quite pleasant in the city. And what's more, the turning circle is really extremely small, at 9.5 meters.
A respectable turning circle, soft steering, and low charging power as well as low range. So far, one thing is clear. The Dacia Spring is a car for the city or short journeys, and that's where it can have a huge advantage.
The Spring is incredibly efficient. Even the specification of 13.9 kilowatt hours is decent. Many can't keep up with that, but even less is possible. It has this eco mode. In eco mode, the output is reduced from 33 to 23 kilowatts. The top speed is reduced to 100 kilometers per hour, and the range in the city should be 305 kilometers instead of 230. That's really good for such a small 27 kilowatt hour battery. And if you convert that, it would mean that it consumes less than 10 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's not just good, it's record-breaking.
What about its competitors? The Opel Corsa E, already mentioned, costs around €12,000 more than the Dacia, and according to WLTP, consumes around 2 kilowatt hours more per 100 kilometers. But it is better off in terms of range and charging performance. For just under €26,000, €3,000 more than a Spring, there is a Renault Twingo E-Tech Electric with a range of just 190 kilometers and a maximum of 22 kilowatts charging power. The Dacia clearly wins the long-distance comparison here. Similar picture with the Ego Life. €2,000 more expensive, 60 kilometers less range, and since it can only charge in a single phase, it stands at the charging station for 6 hours for a full charge. There are also electric vehicles that are cheaper than the Spring. For example, the Opel Rox E or Renault Twizy for €8,000 and €12,000 respectively. However, they are significantly behind the Dacia Spring in terms of driving and charging performance and are purely two-seaters. The Spring also offers space for 5, although that space is rather relative.
I'm over 190 tall, and I generally have a problem tucking my body in small cars. But here too, the Spring is really not that well positioned. The seat is not adjustable in height. The steering wheel is fixed and cannot be adjusted. And here as well, I touch the door with my shoulder on the side. I feel very restricted here. That's why I can't find a position where I feel comfortable and safe. In my opinion, that's a no-go, and I would say that savings were made in the wrong places. Not to mention the row behind me. No adult can sit in there.
Let's summarize this again. The area of application, city, is clearly defined, as is the stature of the potential customers. What about equipment and functions? Here, Dacia has often lagged behind in the past.
The issue of equipment is once again such a double-edged sword. What's missing? So definitely at the top, assistance systems. There is virtually nothing in the way of assistance systems here. We have an emergency brake assistant, but it only reacts to cars, not to pedestrians. Next point, we don't have cruise control, not even for an extra charge. At best, there's a limiter where you can set a maximum speed. But okay, it doesn't matter. It's a city car. You don't necessarily need cruise control. But what I do miss in the car are the typical electric car functions. Navigation with charging route planning. Unfortunately, we don't have it here. At least we can select charging stations in the special destinations. That's pretty good. On the positive side, the Spring is now networked. There's a My Dacia app with which you can connect the car, and then you can pre-air condition it or start, pause or stop a charging process. And the topic of basic equipment, that's also gotten better. We have a radio, electric windows all round, and automatic lights. These are all things that were not always a given for a Dacia.
The navigation system and parking aid with camera are available for just under €2,000 extra in the higher Extreme equipment line. Not very pleasant for the Dacia, but definitely worth mentioning. In the NCAP crash test, the Spring only got 1 star. The reasons for this include the lack of assistance systems and below-average pedestrian protection.
The Dacia Spring is a car with a lot of up and down sides. On the one hand, of course, as expected, we have to forego a lot. We are limited by the area of operation or by our body size. On the other hand, it's also surprising, with a modern design, good manoeuvrability, and especially good efficiency. Now some might say, on the used car market I can get a lot more for the money. That may be, but there's one thing you don't get there, and that's a new car with a 3-year guarantee up to 50,000 kilometres.